Hello and welcome to The Secret of My Success, the podcast where we explore what it means to live a fulfilling life. I am your host, Erin Curran. Today I am joined by a friend that I have known for some 15, 16 years, Miss Lydia Harris. She is a mother of two and a grandmother of two. She's originally from Detroit. She has been in nursing for much of her career, but she also has a very entrepreneurial spirit. She and I met at a Harv Eker event, and it's actually a funny story that she might share with us. We also attended CEO Space together. We were at the beginning of the Women's Prosperity Network founding. She's done some landmark education. So we've been swimming in similar circles for quite a while. So, Lydia, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining.
Oh, well, thank you, Erin. I'm happy to be a part of something like this. This is awesome. I'm so looking forward to this.
Thanks. So tell our audience a little bit about yourself. Here we talk about like what it means to live a fulfilling life. Where would you like to dive into a juicy conversation?
Oh, juicy. You want juicy? Okay.
Did I get myself in trouble?
Yeah, perhaps, perhaps, but I'll wait. I'll give you about 15 minutes before we go too juicy.
Let's get warmed up, right?
Yeah, we'll warm it up a little bit. Well, thank you again, Erin. And like you said, you talked about my career. I have two adult sons that have been very instrumental in my evolution, as most parents will tell you their children are. And I also have two grandsons. So I am it just is kind of surrounded by all these young men. And now as they grow older, I go, oh my goodness, you used to be, and now they're big guys, and they couldn't make me prouder. Well, maybe if they were a doctor or a lawyer or Indian chief, but I'm not going to hold it against them. They seem to be pretty good guys. They follow the law. They enjoy the families that they've created, and that means all the world to me. And I got those grandkids. My youngest grandson is 6. His name is Jackson.
Wow.
And my oldest grandson is 14. He was my bonus grandson because when my son got into the relationship with his mom 10 years ago, I can't believe it's been 10 years that they've
Wow.
been together. And so at first, he was just, her kid. But then when Jackson came along, then I said, well, if you don't mind, I'd love to be your grandma too. But if you don't want that,
Mm.
I'm okay. So he said, wow, cool. And then about a year or so later, he said, you know what? I am so lucky. He said, I've got 3 grandmas.
Oh, wow.
I was like, "Aw," and we weren't even talking about anything, and he mentioned that. So I thought that was really kind of special. So I call myself
Oh,
G3 when I sign his cards.
that's
So
really sweet.
yeah, and you mentioned about the entrepreneurial stuff. In fact, Aaron,
Yes.
well, I'll get back to how we met and what our first experience was after we get to the juicy part.
Okay.
But you also did something amazing for me. I don't know if you remember, but when I wrote my first book, you
Yes,
named it for me.
I do remember that. Yes.
How are you going to pay for those shoes? Because it was the story of what really got me into entrepreneurship. And stop me at any time, Erin. You know I can go on and on.
No,
But
absolutely. I remember at the time you were sharing with me about, your youngest son,
mhm,
and he was wanting on these like really expensive shoes at the time, and
Air
you
Jordan.
we were right in the thick of all of those entrepreneurial training classes, and you really
Yes,
took it
yes.
all to heart.
Yes, yes. And what happened was I had a friend who was well, he was a pilot, but his background was as an engineer. So he was a tinkerer. He loved tinkering with little electronic things. And
Mm-hmm.
so I had mentioned to him one of the challenges I was having with my son because, so many parents got that little bumper sticker.
Mm.
I'm the parent of an honor school child at such and such middle school. I never got the bumper sticker.
Oh no.
I'm still a little miffed. I mean, can you tell? I mean, they're
Ah.
30 and 34 now. Okay. But so I unfortunately learned that very early on, they didn't really have any academic pursuits. And
Mm.
they didn't have to be a doctor or a lawyer, like I said earlier, but just something. What are you interested in? What do you like? What do you like to do that you think you might be a career kind of option? And so
Mm.
he was about 13 at the time, and I'm asking all these questions because middle school, and then right after middle school, you're going to high school, and so you've got to kind of have an idea what you want to major in and all this. And so I'm asking this and I'm trying not to bug, and he wasn't really being helpful. And so finally one day he came home excited and he said, "Ma, I finally figured out what I want to do." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's here. He's found it. Thank you, Jesus." And he said, "I want to be a repo man." And I took a moment and I said, "Oh." I said, "Well, tell me a little bit more about that." So I wanted to say, "Are you crazy?" It's one of those parental patient things that you learn. And so
Uh-huh.
then he
Take a
started
deep
telling
breath.
me that he's like, "Well, you get to take things from people that don't deserve it because they don't want to pay for stuff." He said, "And then I could also do real estate because if they can't afford their TV and their dishwasher, then I can sell their house for them too." And I'm
Oh my
like,
gosh.
"Yeah, yeah, you were there, huh?" I said, "Oh my gosh," too. I probably added a few more four-letter words, but
Well, yeah.
those those kind of came about. And so I was like, "Oh my God, somebody got to help me with this child." And so my friend, the pilot, came along and he said, "Well, why don't you let him tinker with some electronic things, and see if he likes that?" And so he had some stuff that was turning lights on and off. But that was before Alexa. I can't say it because she'll start turning stuff off in my house. But and so it was kind of ahead of its time, the product line.
Mm.
And so we got excited, and so we took a course at a local church on starting a business. And
Mm.
I said, "Well, it's not really for me, it's for my 13-year-old son." And they had to really kind of take pause and go, "Well, we never had children before." And I gave her this spiel about, look, children, everybody doesn't want to be a doctor or a lawyer. There's some kids that want to do some other things that may be entrepreneurial. And so this learning would be beneficial for them. And they said, "Okay, well, we'll let him." And so he was the first child graduate from their program.
Wow.
And even today, he still has his entrepreneurial pursuits and he still loves Air Jordans. And in fact, that's a big part of his entrepreneurial business. He buys used Jordans and he refurbishes them and then he sells them on eBay and other things too. He had a PayPal account before I did. I couldn't
Wow.
believe it. And I'm like, "Okay, I thought I was supposed to be teaching you here, but but that's okay, wherever
Technically,
you're
you
getting it
did.
from." Yeah, wherever you're getting it from. And like you mentioned, CEO space. I was in class July '08, and I think you must have been in one of the classes in late '08 or '09.
I think it was 908. So I was
Okay.
just 2 months after you. Yeah.
Okay, great, great. And the reason I went to CEO Space was because they had a teen entrepreneurship program.
Oh,
And
that's
I
cool.
had to go in order for him to go.
Okay.
And so that's how we got to CEO space. Okay. So I learned because I had to go and to CEO space with him, and I met the most amazing people. I met Mark Victor Hansen, one of the Chicken Soup for the Soul authors, and I met several really famous. Les Brown, I met him in subsequent trainings, and so I was very, very happy. And I have to say that my son, even though he didn't respond as I thought he might, he was he got it because it's still with him. And I remember later on that year, he was getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning and staying on the computer. And that was the beginning before the internet got really, really wild. And
Yes.
I'm wondering, what is he doing in the middle of the night? And of course, being mom, I'm thinking all the bad, wrong stuff first. And
Huh.
I found out what he was doing. He had met a kid at CEO Space in Australia. The kid was from Australia.
Oh, wow.
So the kid was teaching him how to do some coding to create a website, and that was his best time. So my son just accommodated him. And
Wow.
at first I was like, "What are you doing up in the middle of the night?" And then when he told me, I was like, "Aw." And so that was kind of the birth of things. And our process is what I put in the book, because
Okay.
he truly became an entrepreneur because he wanted shoes, Air Jordan gym shoes that I wasn't going to pay for him. And I was at the Orlando Mall maybe about 6 or 7 months ago, and they have a Nike store. And Nike is
Yeah.
one of the distributors for Air Jordan. And I just went in and I called my son. I said, "Hey, guess where I'm at?" And I said, "They've got all these Air Jordans," and I'm flipping them over. And I'm like, $2,500? Wait a minute.
Holy cow.
Exactly. And he's like, "Oh yeah, those are da 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 da." He knew which ones I was talking about. And
Oh,
he's like,
wow.
"Yeah, that's how much they charge. But, if I had them, I could do this." And I'm like, "Okay." And so
Wow.
fast forward again, and he's talking to my 14-year-old grandson. And he's kind of been, a stand-in for his dad.
Yeah.
And so he's teaching him. So I don't buy them gym shoes because they all wear Jordans.
Oh my
And I'm
gosh.
not getting into that. But he's teaching Isaiah, the 14-year-old. He says, "Okay, you've got to make a decision when you get a pair and you get them fixed up. Are you going to rock them or stock them?" And so I'm like, "Rock or stock?" He's like, "Yeah, rock them is you get to wear them once in a while. You don't wear them playing in the street or doing anything. You wear them when you're not going to get them dirty or anything, just for the sake of having worn them. But
Yeah.
stock them, it's a pair that's nearly new and you bought or refurbished just to sell, because maybe they're not your size or they're not the color you want." And so it's made me very happy that he's introducing him to it, because he's playing basketball now, and he's 14 and he's got a hairy lip and a deep voice. So yeah, he need to know how to pay for those shoes too.
For sure. Well, I think what's really beautiful about that story that really strikes me is most parents would be, well, you need to figure school out. You've got to go back, like sit in class and like do something that's structured. And you were like, okay, great. So what do you want to do? And then when you were like,
Mm.
I didn't mean that, but please tell me why. Like, what is it about that that interests you? And you were able to, even though you had no clue at the time how to do what he was saying he wanted to do, you gave him the freedom to really explore it and take it on. And
I mean, obviously it's foundational still for him to this day.
Yes, yes. And my older son, he's not into Air Jordans. He's into something totally different. Um,
Yeah.
Believe it or not, he's into Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I mean, I just saw Pokemon, I just saw cartoons. I mean, I loved Snoopy. So these little new Japanese cartoons, it wasn't for me, and it
Right.
infuriated his father. But he loved it, and he was doing things with it, and come to find out, there's a huge market for those things. And in
Okay.
fact, he travels the world. He told me 2 months ago he just got back from Italy. He travels the world going to tournaments, and he buys and sells the cards. He mentors people from kids to older adults. He teaches them about the value of the game and all of these things. And I'm just like, okay, okay. And he's learning all these things. We went out for one of his birthdays, and he said, Mom, he said, let's go by the store. I want to pick up a special bottle of wine for you to try.
Mm,
And so I'm like, oh, okay, goody. It's kind of nice, you can, when your kid's old enough to buy you drinks, right?
right.
And so we go to the liquor store, and he picks out this $60 bottle of wine that
Okay.
is not even a whole bottle. It's 375 milliliters. It's an ice wine. And
Hmm.
apparently they're made from different grapes that are very, very sweet, and they stay on the vine, I guess, longer than season. And so it makes them very sweet. And usually it's a white wine. And
Okay.
I'm like, $60 for a half a bottle of wine? Really? I didn't go for the Air Jordans. You think I'm going for the expensive wine too? What is up with my children? But he does what he does. Neither of them have asked me for money in years. And so what
I'd say
else?
that's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't have to pay no college bills. Hello.
Right.
A lot of
Yeah,
people
and he's
struggle
buying
with
you
that.
maybe a half a bottle of wine, but he's buying it for you, not asking you to buy it for him.
There you go. There you go. So I I'm I feel like I'm blessed by the best.
Absolutely. Well, that is absolutely brilliant and beautiful. And I can tell that, over the years, I've definitely seen how much your two sons have meant to you. And it's just so beautiful to see that, you still have that really rich relationship with them. And I can't even imagine how much they must appreciate the freedom that they've been able to have just because you helped open their minds and open doors for them. Because
Yeah.
I think around the time that we met, your younger son is the one that you took to CEO space and were
Yep.
introducing to the entrepreneurial stuff. Your older son, you hadn't had access to have that conversation, so you were just kind of starting that with him too. Is that right?
Well, I didn't actually get started with him until maybe a few years later. At
Yeah.
the time, he was living with his father. We we had that's an interesting story too. But when he was born, he had some birth challenges that gave him impairment in some of his cognitive processing.
Okay.
And so when at the time I lived in Detroit, Michigan, that's where I'm from, and we had such difficulty with getting assistance through the school system. And so I'm standing up. No, you have to test him. You have to test him and find out what he needs, because it's not working. Whatever it's not working. And so they tested him, and come to find out, he tested 2 points over the level where he would have gotten a lot of assistance, and instead they gave him none. And
Mm.
oh my goodness, you talk about a black ghetto mom coming out. Oh, Aaron, I'm sure that there's somebody that still remembers the golden nuggets I laid that day in front of all of those teachers, because I was so angry. I said, for 2 points, he could become the next burglar in your house, the next killer, the next this, that, or the other, because you're not helping him to succeed in academia. And oh my gosh, I just went on and on and on. And finally, he said, "It's okay, Ma." I'm like, okay. And so his father, because we always, even though we were separated almost from the time he was born, um, his father said, look, because he lived in Cincinnati. He said, well, let me try it through our school system because our school system is much better than Detroit's. Unfortunately, that was the truth. And that was a real hard thing for me to do. And in fact, my mom was very, very angry with me. How can you give your child away? And I'm like, I'm not giving him to anybody but his father. He loves him. You said so yourself. You know that. And she's like, well, you shouldn't give him to her. I'm not giving him. We share him, and we always have, and we still do. He just moved into his first apartment on his own a year and a half ago, and I was part of that decision making. I mean, he was 32 years old, and we had to all talk about what the expectations were, how you're going to manage things, and now, your money isn't just for expensive wine and lobster dinners. You got rent to pay, all of these things. So, we have been very fortunate to share the responsibility of him. So he did high school in Cincinnati and he graduated with honors.
Awesome.
Go figure. My youngest son, on the other hand, he didn't see the value in school. He said, they're just teaching us to take the test. And I'm like, what test? We have the FCAT, which is an achievement test in Florida. That's all they want is for us to take the test. And it was so alarming, disturbing, surprising, a whole lot of adjectives. He said, you know what, Ma? He said, we have the first black president in the history of our country, and we can't talk about it in school. He said, and I have a problem with that. He said, they want me to know all this other extraneous knowledge that I can't ever see myself using. I'm thinking to myself, oh yeah, a repo man does not need to know fractions, right? And so, and I think he might have had a bully situation, but he never told me, never ever told me. So, I homeschooled him. That didn't last very long because he wouldn't do his homework for me. So we collectively worked together and he got a GED. But he has made his own money for the last 10 years. So I'm very happy with that. And sometimes you got to go through a little fire. Uh, uh, you know, every well-cooked steak knows that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and those are the points where we get to step out of those comfort zones,
Mm-hmm.
test our mettle, and in
Mm-hmm.
fact, actually be when you're thrown into the fire, that's when the impurities of the steel come out, and that's when the finest swords are forged, right?
Same thing with diamonds, baby. You don't get a diamond without pressure.
Yeah, I know. I remember who was it? Blair Singer would talk about perturbation
Mm.
at, at some of those Harvecker seminars that we would go
Mm-hmm.
to. And it's like if there are cracks in your canister, then that coal is never going to turn into a diamond because the pressure has to get to a certain psi
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
before that chemical transformation takes place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And sometimes those disasters are often blessings in disguise,
Usually.
just like with butterflies,
Yes.
those Little caterpillars don't know that they're going to fly in a month or so.
Well, they don't know they're going to turn into liquid before they fly.
Absolutely. I know that would, if I knew all of that, I probably wouldn't spin a cocoon.
No.
Nah, I'll just walk
You
around the
want me,
garden. I'm good.
you want me to what?
And so I can do what? And oh, wait a minute. Don't forget the good part. And then I'm only going to live for 30 days? Oh, no, I pass.
I was scrolling on Facebook earlier today, and there's one of the memes was a caterpillar and a butterfly sitting at a bar, and the
Ah,
caterpillar looks at the butterfly and says, "You've changed," and the butterfly says, "But we're supposed to."
there you go. There you go.
True.
And we fight change, don't we? We fight,
We really do. Kicking and screaming usually.
and that's the
That,
only
that
constant in the world is change.
isn't that crazy? Well, that's actually the reason why I wanted to start this podcast because I spent my career, my entire adult life looking for the answer that I thought I was missing because I kept coming into the same thing where everything that I was doing kept making me feel bad and I'm like, "No, I'm not supposed to feel bad. I'm supposed to feel better."
Hmm.
Like, this doesn't make sense. I must be doing something wrong. So that's not it. Let's go on to something else.
Hmm.
And and when I wrote my book, Hate Your Way to Happiness, the reason why it's called Hate Your Way to Happiness is because you have to go through the fire, through the through all of the nasty, mucky parts in order to clean most of the parts out. It's like you're stinking thinking, like the stuff that really doesn't serve you or make any sense.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes,
Mhm.
yes. And I think that we're always looking to find ourselves. And really, in essence, it's not really about finding yourself, but more creating yourself.
That is
And
very well said.
yeah, and I as I'm approaching a lot closer than I thought retirement. I'm not even calling it retired. I'm calling it refired. Uh, because I'm
That's nice.
refiring
I
up
like
to do
that.
something different. And so I, at this point, see change as a necessary process to mm, make money without having a job. So something's got to
Mm.
change in order for that to happen. And, I find it's my mindset, my expectations, my actions, some of my belief systems. Um,
Right.
and the ability to reflect and to be honest with myself. Well, did this work or did it not work? And then unfortunately always wind up looking at the lowest common denominator. And what is it? The thing that is in all of our experiences, us.
Of course. It's like, no, it can't be me. Yeah, but you're the one who is present in every single situation.
The lowest common
So
denominator.
now what?
Yes.
It's always
Yeah.
fun to get to that point where it's like, okay, great. So I am here and now I want to be over there. And I've been trying, I have been trying to start this podcast for 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I bought this little book called The Podcast Journal. I saw it online someplace because it's like I've always been a speaker. I've always loved having conversations with people about mindset, personal development, how the human psyche works, why we end up where we do, from the spiritual to the scientific. Like I dig all of it. And I've been like, I bought this book 4 years ago, and I would get through the first 14, 15 days of the process. And that 14, 15 day mark is where you start picking up the phone and calling people and asking them questions. And every time I would bail because I don't want to talk to anybody until it's done, until it's perfect.
Mm.
That was the problem. I couldn't get my podcast started. I couldn't get my training started. I couldn't get my coaching practice started. I couldn't get my anything started because I kept thinking that I had to have it all figured out before I could get started.
And life just
And
ain't like that.
no, no, it's definitely not. And last year, I just did a lot of introspection and I got to see where my foot was nailed to the floor around that stuff. And so here we are.
Well, like Nike says, just do it.
Uh huh.
Pretty simple, but man, oh man.
It's one of those things where it's really a simple process,
Hmm.
but it's not easy. And, one of the things that I really value from all of the personal development that I've done and all of the networking that I've done and all of the experiences that I've had in the last 15 years in the entrepreneurial phase of my journey has been the people that I've met and the fact that we all think a little bit different. And that, like, when I talk about these projects with somebody like you or anybody else in my, more favorite circles, it's less of a conversation of why would you want to do that? And more of a conversation of, oh my gosh, that sounds awesome. Tell me more.
Hmm.
And
That's a
if I'm
sign that you're hanging with the right folks.
True. But at the same time, it's kind of like what you said to your son when he said repo man. It's like, I don't want people who are just blowing smoke up my ass. It's like, tell me if if it sounds like a really crazy idea and I'm trying to run away from something, it's also good to have people around who would be willing to say, okay, so what are you really trying to create? And like, how can we really accomplish this? What do you need?
Hmm. 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 That is very important. And I think that's the one thing that we learned at CEO Space is the value of helping someone else even before you help yourself.
Yeah.
And this is not a foreign concept. I mean, eh, most of us had mothers, and at some time many of our mothers were hostesses and hosted dinners, and they always served other people before they ate. And
Mm.
this is a big part of what business could and should be, in the spirit of cooperation, which was Bernie's big thing, was cooperative business. And
Yeah.
now that we find that it's different than that in so many spheres, that kind of takes the fun out of it. So that's why you have to really look for those people that will say, wow, that is so cool. Or even the ones that say, girl, you done lost your mind. Have you thought about how you gonna afford to pay for this? How you gonna this, that, or the other? And sometimes that needs to be part of it because we can look at it and we can see ourselves losing the glass slipper and Prince Charming going door to door looking for us. But the bottom line is, you know what? We had bunions before we had that glass slipper. And, and just that night did our toes get a pedicure. So you have to look at all the things that go into it and
Yeah.
and be willing to say, well, that landed me a prince. So, maybe I will, polish these toes a little bit more because you never know who might want to put something on this foot.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
That's a
good to
fun way
have
of putting it.
the friends that will be just honest with you.
Yes. Yes. I actually, I went out with some people I hadn't seen in a little while recently. And it was a fascinating conversation because I feel more grounded and true to myself than I've ever felt in my life. And sometimes it's a little bit strange. I generally speaking, am an introvert by nature. If most people don't know that, most people don't know that because I'm really great at networking and I listen a lot more than I speak if people really pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were having lunch and I was just talking and talking and talking about like this and that and what's going on in my life. And I was a different version of me than these people were used to. And at some point, the conversation kind of snapped back into them trying to create the old way.
Ah.
It was really, it was something I couldn't put my finger on in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
You do
but
outgrow
as I
people when you change.
Yes. As I was debriefing afterwards, doing some journaling and really looking into things, like one of the things that I've come to understand is, like we were talking about, there's nothing right or there's nothing wrong. It's just, okay, great. So this is where we are. Now what?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Doing that debrief, I've learned not to make myself wrong in these kinds of situations, and at the same time, not to make them wrong either.
Mm-hmm.
And just to take a look and go, okay, great. So what happened? What do I prefer? What do I not prefer? And where do I want to go from here?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was really powerful to get that sometimes you just outgrow that glass slipper.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
You got to buy new shoes, and it's a great excuse to go shopping.
Yep. And then you got to figure out how you're going to pay for those shoes. I'm sorry, I
That
had to
is
do
such a good
that.
feeling.
But that's all so 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 very true. And I think that you do come into it with a sense of self-empowerment where you realize, oh, wow, I'm growing, I'm different, and I know for me it feels like I'm better. And that's kind of the challenge with relationships, is because everybody doesn't grow at the same speed.
Right.
So if you have a
Right.
relationship that's based on what you do together right now, there's no telling what's going to happen in 5 years, much less 10, 15, 20. And
Hmm.
if you're going to be able to be tolerant or be tolerated in terms of your own growth, and is someone going to try and stop you because you're making too much money, because you're having too much fun, and they're doing the boring job? Or are they going to say, hey, you're having too much fun, I want to do what you do, what can I do, how can I join you, how can I help? And that's where that spirit of cooperation comes in. Who was it Jim Rohn that said, if you help enough other people get what they want, you will inadvertently get everything that you want too.
I
One of the old
don't
guys.
know if it was Jim Rohn. Maybe
Zig?
it was Zig Ziglar.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah. But that
But it's like
was,
in that family of people
yes,
because Jim
the
Rohn was
original
very.
guys, the original marketers, the original sales kings. And
Forefathers of the personal development movement.
yes, yes, yes. And it's served me well. I think it's part of the spirit of volunteerism. It's part of the spirit of karma. And I've done that, so much of my life, especially since my children were born, because when they wanted to do these things that seemed outlandish to me, and it wasn't anything that I could really help them with after a certain point, then I knew that I had to depend upon the benevolence of others to
Mhm.
guide them where I couldn't. And so I had to do that for someone else. It's kind of like that bank of karma. You have to put in order to take out. And so I always wanted to put in so that my children could take out. And that's what I think I'm seeing, is that they're doing the same thing. For example, my youngest son, another proud moment during the pandemic, early in the pandemic, um, his girlfriend sent me a picture. And I looked at it and I'm like, what is he doing? I said, he's cooking? And she's like, yep. She said, we had extra. And so he made some beans and rice and threw in a chicken leg. And we got some paper plates. And we went out and started handing them to people that didn't have food.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, okay, I wanted the bumper
Oh,
sticker that said he was an honor student. Okay, I didn't get it, but I got that. And,
still
I
with
would have
that.
sold that car so many years ago. I wouldn't have the bumper sticker anyway. But the picture of him cooking and spooning rice and beans into like 10 different plates was just,
Wow.
um, it was just, I felt very good about that. And so we also have to be thankful for the little things. Um, because, yeah, like I said, I would have wanted the bumper sticker, but this was a little thing that to me was a much bigger thing. The fact that when he had enough, he would share it with somebody unknown. He didn't
Mm,
know, I didn't know. And just for the sake of giving from your own abundance. It's kind of like you realize we all have enough. It's
yeah,
just about it's not just about your resources, but your resourcefulness. And
exactly.
those
Yes.
are the things that I try to work with my clients, work with my family, um, to do that for in all of the areas of my life. And I've been very, very, very fortunate. I'm not a millionaire. I'm not so sure. Well, I did play the lottery last night. I haven't even checked the numbers. I see how much faith I have. But I don't know. I heard that you can't win if you don't play. So every once in a while,
That's
if I'm
true.
standing in Publix and there's nobody in the line and I got $5, I'll go and I'll play a couple tickets. And I don't even have numbers. I say, give me easy pick because if it's gonna come to me, it's gonna come from somebody else deciding, not me.
That's
So,
true.
we have to be very, and that brings you around to gratitude. We have to be grateful for the things that we have and see that they are so much better than so many other people in the world have. And I've gotten to the point, even when I take a shower, I get a flashback of something from the news with kids watching in dirty water. And so I'm thankful
Um,
that I don't have to do that. I can go to the store and buy my groceries, and people are picking through the trash for food.
mm,
And, I'm just so, so, so thankful when I see homeless people walking around, and many of them have mental health issues, and you can see it in a lot of them. And
right.
you just think, I think back to when I had my children, and it's like that was somebody's baby at some point in time. And,
Yeah.
you know, eh, you should have been an entrepreneur. Maybe. So, but it's
It
it's
really
it's been a
is. I
wild
mean,
and a wonderful ride. And now let's get to the juicy part before we get to the
oh
end.
God, what's the
Speaking
juicy part? Should I be scared?
No. Let's see, how can I temper it? Well, I one of the turning points, I guess, in my life. Oh, and that was the turning point because I got invited to an event of Harv Eckers, and it was called Never Work Again. I don't know about you, but you were there. But
I
for
was.
most people, the thought of never working again and still being able to thrive, that's a worthy subject to pay attention to. And so this OT that I had worked with, she offered me her ticket because she couldn't go. And she said, "Oh, and by the way, I have a hotel room, and if you'd like to share in that, you can split the cost with one of the ladies." And so I'm an only child, so I didn't have sisters or anything. And so I just never even thought about how that would play out. But at the time, I was, still trying to, raise two kids and had my mom who at the time had dementia and so I kind of wanted to get away too. And I said, "Okay, we're going to make this happen." I had to go from Florida to California to do it. And it wasn't California, wasn't it? Yeah, it was California. And so I didn't realize that when she said there were accommodations, I'm thinking, okay, me and another lady and, sharing a room. And I hadn't met her. And unfortunately, I got there late at night. And so what I found when I opened the door to the room was that it was a total of four of us, and there were two beds. And the person that was in the other bed, there was just one person. I'm like, "Oh, dear Lord, I'm going to sleep with a woman." And I'm like, "Okay, how does this happen? How did I get to this point? Okay, I wanted to never work again. Okay, never working again. Did that mean I started to sleep with white women? How did this come into play?" And fortunately for me, it was you.
Well, girl, all of us really wanted to get to that never work again part. And at the time, we were all a little shy in the bank accounts. And so we were doing whatever we
Yes.
could to make it as,
As close as we could to it.
oh my gosh, yes. But at the same time, I mean, we had a blast.
Yes, we did. And that's where we heard about CEO Space because Bernie did a presentation there during that conference. And then he talked about how they had the teen program. So I was hooked. Because okay, I don't mind if I don't have to work, but I want this child to make some money because I don't want him to live with me until I'm 60. Like so many of
Right.
my friends, their kids were still with them or they had gone to college, they sacrificed, they mortgaged the house, they saved, and then the kid graduates from college and then comes home, can't get a job. And then everybody's got to pay those bills. I'm like, I don't want to do that. So, little did I
All of
know.
you gotta put in the work.
I was very glad that CEO Space, the teen event, changed my son from wanting to be a repo man into something else.
It's really
So,
powerful and totally worthwhile. So it
oh,
was worth it
absolutely.
going and bunking
Absolutely.
with three other ladies.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, it wasn't so bad sleeping with you, Aaron.
Shh, don't tell anybody.
It's only a podcast and millions will see.
Yeah, right? I'm up to 37 downloads so far, so I don't think we
Ooh,
need to brag
girl.
about
Well,
it.
this is just the beginning.
I do understand that. Yeah, I was talking with my chiropractor earlier and he was talking about what are your goals for the year? And I said, well, I just launched the podcast. He's like, okay, so how many episodes by the end of the year? 50?
Ooh.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, that sounds like a lot, but yes.
Well, is he going to be a guest and give you a free adjustment?
He will be a guest. I don't know about the free adjustment, but I swear by them. They are absolutely amazing. And like, he's very much, both he and his wife's sister run the practice, and they're
Mm,
very much into law of attraction and energy healing, like, and all of the, it's a total mind, body, spirit kind of a thing.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, it'll be fun to have him on
Good. And
for
then
sure.
he'll increase those downloads and you'll be on your way. You're on the way now. And we have to speak it, we have to believe it, and then we will see it.
Isn't that the truth?
Yep.
That really is the truth because, like you were saying, it's not about us becoming something, it's about us creating who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And really, like, we are not taught that this is how the universe works. We just sort of sleepwalk through life
Mm-hmm.
and wonder why we can't do anything beyond where we end up. And we can't do anything beyond where we end up precisely because we've never opened the box to see what else is possible. We're taught when we're very young to stop dreaming and get serious.
And get a
And that's
job.
absolutely, and that's the worst thing that you can do to a child, like to stop them from using their imagination. This is our creative force. We are creative beings. I was listening to I believe it was Joe Dispenza, and he was talking about how your soul craves adventure,
Mm,
and you slogging through life day after day after day doing the same stupid crap over and over just puts your soul to sleep.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's like it's time to wake your soul up. Your soul is calling out to you to live your dreams, to fulfill your destiny, to actually be the person that you were designed to be because there are so many people who are waiting on you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And somewhere there's a place for you to leave that footprint. And
Absolutely.
I'm becoming real clear on the value of legacy.
Mm,
As we grow older, more and more people that we love die. And you have to think, what are they leaving behind? And the more and more I think about it, the more and more I think, okay, I want to leave a little trail. I want to be like the kids in what little story was that where they left a little trail of breadcrumbs? Excuse me, Hansel and Gretel, was it?
yeah, I believe so.
So I want to be that.
Amazing. So, Miss Lydia, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on my podcast as one of my very first guests. Thank you so much for joining me today and sharing so much of your journey. I
Oh, thank
think
you.
there'd probably be some people who might want to reach out and find out a little bit more about how you're going to pay for those shoes at the very least.
Oh my goodness, yes. And I am so looking forward to hearing a copy of this because we're gonna move that 37 number and switch it around
Absolutely.
very quick.
Yes. No, game
And then we're
on.
gonna add some zeros.
Well, yes, for sure. By the end of this year, there are going to be a few decimal places moved.
Yeah, exactly.
I
And
appreciate your support with all of that.
and then maybe we'll come to the point where we never work again.
Well, that's always a
That's where we
possibility.
started.
Let's see what kind of a journey we can create from this point.
Yes, I'm up for that. Thank you so much, Erin. I really appreciate you offering this opportunity to me. It's an opportunity for me too.
Well, I appreciate that you have such an adventurous spirit to be willing to play with something that is brand new out of the gate. I have always appreciated your spirit of community and support and contribution,
Oh,
and like this is that for me, and this is also that for the listening community, I am certain. So thank you.
my pleasure. My pleasure.
Awesome. And for those of you who are watching or listening, this is The Secret of My Success, the podcast where we explore what it means to live a fulfilling life. I am your host, Erin Curran. Thank you so much for joining and listening all the way to the end, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.